a computer can make you perfect, but like you lose a lot of soul in that.
More and more in art and society, I can't help but feel like we're all in this giant rush to get to the gimmick. This could be the drop in a song, or it could be that big CGI fight scene that's designed to wow people, the latest trend that everyone's hopping on in some social media format. And whilst it's not bad all the time, I can't help but feel like getting to this gimmick is robbing us of good storytelling and good artistry. And I'm not the only one who thinks this. My guest today is Swaré. He is Sydney's hip-thrusting pop prince. He has also gone viral on social media himself. He works at the intersection of music and Web3. He educated me a lot on how NFTs could be the future to artists creating really good revenue for themselves. He offers great advice on how to back yourself as an artist, create your art in your own vision, and find your own sound. We cover an enormous amount of topics in our conversation. So if you want to skip ahead to anything of your fancy, there are time codes and chapters in the description below for you to skip ahead to where you want to be. My personal favorite is when we get into that whole topic about getting past this era of the gimmick in creativity. And we're synced. We're all good.
Let's go.
First things first, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you,
It's been a while since I've seen you.
It's been a long time. Thanks for having me, dude. And I'd like, just before we sat down, I was saying congratulations. This is really cool, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is hard to do, so well
And
done.
congratulations to you. You've been quite the artist in development, and now you're just really crushing it since the days when I was following after you with a camera.
Yeah. Well, man, I'm trying to. I mean, I think it's one of those things. It looks maybe more interesting than it is in real life. The reality looks different to the little glimpses that people see, but it's still, man, it's exciting. Yeah.
Nice. So you've been a musician under the name of Swaré now for how long?
I think the first release was in 2017.
2017.
So since then, well, but yeah, I mean, 6 months before then, when I was like, Swaré is the thing, I'm going to do that.
Nice.
So yeah, it's been how many? 5 years? 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
We don't do math well.
No.
Not even simple math like that.
No.
I remember when I was chasing after you with a camera doing some behind the scenes stuff. You were working with a producer and had people doing the music for you. You've since sort of stepped into that role as well.
Yeah.
Do you do that from start to finish to get like a solid demo, and then you sort of get that to mastering and mixing after that, or do you sort of still get a producer in to do that like last 10%?
Yeah, I think definitely in the early stages it was like didn't really back myself at all, and I was like, this is what I think it could be, and they were like, yeah, it's all right, and they'd more or less rip it down and build something else. And I was naive enough to be like, oh, okay, that's what a producer does.
Yeah.
But yes, since then, now it's like much more my own stuff.
Yeah.
I'm still getting producers in, but they're, rather than ripping it all down, they're just like adding another coat of paint.
That way you get to create your own soundscape, and it's more you.
Oh yeah, and it's just more me. Exactly right.
I remember just listening to your songs as they've come out over the years. It's kind of gone from a very bright pop thing, and you're kind of experimenting with a bit more of a darker, almost like a cyberpunk-esque kind of thing at the moment. The Swaré music that I've listened to has always had that electronic element to it, but how have you, as an artist and now producer on top of that, been able to explore those sort of soundscapes for, I guess, the identity and the aesthetic that you want to create?
Yeah, I mean, and like you're right, the early stuff, it's all super kind of electronic-y and poppy, but then now, yeah, it's going into a different direction because, like, I mean, you're not the same person anymore. And like the things, like I'm singing about going out and partying, and I don't do that much anymore. Like I love it, but like it doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
I live in Sydney. But yeah, so now I'm much more like, we're about to record some new stuff, and there's a lot more guitars and a lot more like, it's still a massive mix, I think. Like there is like a big cyberpunk vibe to it and a real electronic vibe to it, but like I'm influenced by like so much stuff with real instruments. I'm like, I can't not have that in there as well. Now when I write, I'm not really thinking about ever releasing the music. I'm just kind of like, I feel like writing, so I'm going to write. And again, it will go back into a folder, and then I'll dig things out when it's time to release music. Now I got like a bunch of new toys recently. I got like all this kind of these Roland instruments and stuff. So I was like, man, I got to dig through these.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like kind of whenever I feel. I don't put pressure on it anymore.
Yeah, that's nice. What was the pressure that you were putting on it beforehand?
Oh man, because you just think like you see we live in an age where, you know, you can just scroll on your phone and you just see these really accomplished musicians writing the coolest shit.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, I better be that person. But man, like,
This is pulling your standards back to being your standards.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
Dude, like the whole reason I started writing music is because I like music, not because like I need it to be something. Yeah. So there's just whenever I feel like it.
So constantly writing, having all this stuff there, and then if something hits and clicks, that's when you really grab onto it.
Yeah, totally. Like it's often like I mean, I'm sure you know, it's really easy to write an 8-bar loop. Like, and it's so
It's
like
addictive.
Yeah. And it's probably like 1 in 100 where you go like, this is good. I know this one's good. So I'm kind of waiting for those.
Get out of your chair and just like, all right, I got to do something with this. And
totally.
Then you get stuck in those 8 bars though.
Totally. So like that's kind of, I guess you just quickly, like you're still making your little loops and stuff just to kind of keep production fresh for you. I'll write a song sometimes, you know, from start to finish, like it could be really detailed or whatever. Maybe it's just a rough idea, and I just kind of stock it away in a folder somewhere. And then when I'm like, you know what, I haven't released music for a while. What have I got? And then you go back and look through a year's worth of projects, and you kind of find what was vibing. For the first time ever in some more recent songs, like the synth parts you hear are the synth parts I was playing.
That's cool.
And I haven't been able to do that before because I hadn't bothered to learn how to play the instrument. But yeah, I figured if I'm going to be calling myself a musician, I should know how to play it a little bit.
And as far as like the theory that you have now, obviously it's all self-taught. What's the avenues that you've gone about learning? Is it just YouTube videos that you've been watching, or are you into like the whole circle of fifths and all that kind of stuff? Man,
I know how the circle of fifths works like once every 6 months for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm like, cool, I get it. And then I put it down and it's gone forever. Yeah. Theory-wise, like I know like a real... like my brother will try and tell me about like theory, and like even my girlfriend will be like, this is how this works, because she's a really accomplished jazz musician. So like I'll try and I get little bits and pieces, and particularly with a keyboard, like once you can see how it works, I think that was when the penny dropped, because you go, oh, that's a third, that's a fifth, that's a seventh. Then it all kind of made sense. But yeah.
Is it more about the emotion of the music rather than, and like the feeling that the chords give you, rather than the fact that like that chord progression should be this way because it's in a blues scale?
Well, yeah, totally. And then everyone's, you know, people like I wrote a chord progression just the other day, and I was like, you know, this sounds cool to me. And then someone was like, well, that's kind of boring, because it's going 1, I don't know, whatever it was, like 1, 4, 6, whatever. It's just ascending. And I was like, so
but it rocks. So
but I'm into it.
Yeah.
So I don't really I don't get hung up on that. That said,
no purist elements.
No, but that said, like theories, I don't know. People say like, oh, I don't want to learn theory because it might like, you know, I don't want it to like constrict me.
That's just as purist as being restricted by it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, look, it's, you know, that's like being like, oh, I don't want to read the map. I just want to feel the road. It's like, do you want to know where you're going? It helps.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
So yeah.
Performing live shows, I know you're quite the hip thruster when you're on stage as well. When you've been playing shows before, how have you gone about like locking in and getting gigs for yourself?
Well, man, but like, fortunately I've had management recently to help find gigs for me, gigs I'd probably never find.
Before we get into the gigs, how did you find management, or did management find you?
They found me. Yeah. It was about 2 years ago now, and I got a message from this guy, and he was like, I want to represent you. I'd like to want to have a meeting with you. And I was really not into it at first. I thought it was just some sort of scam. I was like, dude, what? I said to him, I was like, man, why are you helping me? And he's like, because I can't make music and you can. And I love music, so I want your music to be out there. I was like, that's interesting that people do that. Like, I can't imagine being so into music but not just doing it. But once I got over that fear, he's been representing me for about 2 years now.
Nice.
Finding gigs and stuff, which is cool. So yeah, previously it was just me asking to open for people, or like fortunately, you know, friends. Like we're both friends with Lamelo boys, and that worked out really well. Is it Lamelo?
It's Lamelo, not Lamalo.
I think Lamalo is way cooler.
It was one of us is correct, and we're just going to get fired for it at the end of the day. But yeah.
I think, but meeting those guys was cool. And yeah, it's just fortunately at the time that I started gigging, there was enough people around being like, hey, come and open for me or whatever.
I think because remember when we were doing the Mixolydian nights and hosting all those events, for those who don't know the story, group of friends, we all kind of were playing gigs, and this is right when the lockout laws went right through Sydney and just closed down businesses that couldn't stay open to certain hours. Therefore, they lost all this trade, and it was just like, you know, music venue after music venue just closed and closed and closed and closed and closed. And so I'm of two minds of it. First, it sucks that it got rid of so many things.
Totally.
But my experience, at least, was that the gigs that were available weren't very good.
Yeah.
I also accept I probably wasn't very good when I was looking for these gigs at the same time, but it was like you would approach a venue that you knew had a stage and did like a Tuesday night songwriters night or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd be like, oh yeah, nah, here's the number of the guy who organizes it. And it's some old dude who was in a rock band years ago. And because I don't play music of his generation, he was like, oh, we'll put you on first. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's a 10-minute set. And so I used to lug hella gear on public transport because I didn't have a car to go. I would go from Cronulla to Manly, train and ferry to play a 10-minute gig to get a beer and a pub meal.
Wow.
Just to be on stage.
Yeah.
Which was stupid and ridiculous, but I think I did that like a bunch of times.
That's fun though.
It's fun, and like you look back on it like, wow, what was I doing? But it's like, no, you were like trying to get there.
Yeah, that's cool. That's admirable.
But it's the fact that like the gigs that were available or that were left over, I guess, weren't. You know, there was always like this old guard that was like quality checking you to make sure that it fit. You know, oh, how many guitars are in the band? Oh, no, that's not music. This is music, and it seemed to have like a big element of these people who the venues just were like, oh yeah, you play gigs here for years. Yeah, you organize the shows, and they kind of like held the keys to getting you on stage. And I feel like that all went away when the lockout laws came through, and so it was this big reset in a way. And so Mixolydian and the nights that we put on came about because it was like, oh shit. There's no gigs now.
You need to do something.
Now we need to completely take over the entire process to build something so that there's something at least.
And that's cool. Like that's totally cool. Like it just, you're right. It sort of sped everything up and it kind of just something switched off and like the void was there. Yeah. And just a bunch of creative people rushed in to fill that space. And it's so necessary. Like, man, even now, like I don't think the live music in this city at least is like, people aren't going to it that often, whether it's because the venue's too expensive and you can't pay, even a couple of drinks. That's like, $50. Like it's
200.
Yeah. Like
for the night. Yeah.
It's so a lot of like young people who want to go see live music can't see it. And like, but it's cool. Like the way how inventive they get, like, and I was walking, like just in my neighborhood, there was like a warehouse party and these kids are charging $10 on the door and you just BYO and it's just live music all night. I'm like, this is genius. Yeah. Like this is what has to happen and that's what kind of gives you hope. You're like, at least someone's doing something. And
it doesn't matter what generation comes through. There will always be the next thing. Yeah. I remember my uncle has stories about when he was in the band touring around and like they had like 3 cab drivers that they used every weekend and they played like 3 shows in a row. So they did like Annandale Hotel and then they bounced up to like Coogee Bay. Yeah. And it was just like drum kits in this, guitars in this one, all the amp gear in the other taxi, and they just drive from spot to spot. And it was like this crazy, like it was like the 80s and the 90s, but that's how they did it. Just set up, play, go, set up, play, go. And it was like all these different bands that they knew that they would just, tag along with, and you'd open for them, they'd open for you. And it was just this big, that's sort of the way that it was then. And then it kind of changed again. And so there's all these different like eras that kind of come through. So it's nice to see, despite the lockout laws, that it's kind of never going to be able to stop because people will always want to do it.
People will find a way. Yeah. It does. Like I was hearing stories just a few weeks ago about like the 80s and 90s, particularly in Sydney, sounded pretty cool. Like someone was saying in one night they saw Cold Chisel at some venue on Parramatta Road. Then they went and saw In Excess like at a different venue. I'm like, man, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Like, and that's a real shame about like those old venues going, but then also that kind of music is gone as well. So those venues were made for that kind of music, and maybe it doesn't translate. I don't know. Like it
could be just. I mean, this is just speculation, I guess, but it's sort of like they were hoping that would come back. Maybe it hasn't come back. Yeah, and they didn't go. Okay, what's the majority doing now for our business? Let's cater to the majority.
Yeah. Well, it's a weird time, and it feels like since those lockout laws, like, Sydney still hasn't really found its feet. Like it's still like there's a lot of stuff happening, little pockets of stuff, but there's no like, and maybe that's just what it is, but there's no kind of like, this is a city for this kind of music or whatever. Like in the way that Berlin's like techno, Sydney is like, you'll find pockets of everything and it's kind of obscure.
Sydney is one of those funny places where it is an absolute melting pot though. Like I had another musician, Vinny, on and we were talking about just the way that Sydney is structured for music versus like other cities, and Sydney is so free flowing and it's just a bit of everything in kind of if this is what's happening at this venue, then that's what's happening at that venue tonight, because tomorrow night it's going to be something completely different.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily like a baked in
Yeah.
genre.
And that's
sort of
cool.
things.
That's cool. I almost think like Sydney's too big. Like,
It's a tiny town, but it's also too big.
yeah, it feels like a big town basically, but like, and that's why I think the little pockets of stuff are happening, because kids would rather, or anyone would rather, like, why would I go like an hour on the train into the city when we could make something right here out west, or, you know, in Newtown or wherever, like, you know, we can make, that's why those little pockets are
You
happening.
almost end up with these little hubs in the
Totally.
different areas.
Totally.
Yeah.
And but like you said, those hubs are also like free flowing and changing, because you can walk down King Street and hear a punk band, and then 2 doors down you can hear some weird electronic shit. Like, it's that, so that is cool. I'm kind of like, I'm in two minds about Sydney. Part of me is like, nothing happens here, and I'm like, loads of stuff happens here.
Just got to like, but again, it's been pushed so underground, I guess, that you kind of need to be underground with it to catch it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Unless you're paying attention, it could, I guess on the surface, it could really seem like this, musically it's a dead city. But yeah, I don't think that's the case really. I think it's really easy to think that you build it and they will come. And it's not the case. That you can't just release music and hope that someone picks it up. It's not like that. Maybe that was the case a long time ago, but it's definitely not now.
Yeah.
But I also think like I put so much pressure on myself at the start to try and sound a certain way.
Okay.
I
you're chasing after.
I lost sleep over it, man.
Okay.
I was like, I would have to, like, you have to sound like this, or now you sound too much like that person, or not enough like this person. Like, there was a real epiphany moment where I was like, oh wait, this is my music. It gets to be what I want. Like, and if it sounds, of course it's going to sound like a lot of bit different people. Like,
The influences that you have.
that's what art is. Everyone's stealing everything, which is super cool.
Still like an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one thing that if I could do it again, I'd be like, man, just chill out.
Yeah.
Like, just do whatever you want. And even I have to remind myself that now sometimes. I'm like, oh, does this sound a lot like this person?
Yeah.
And people will draw bits and pieces from everything.
It's not just like, oh, I want to sound like this person. You'd be like, the drums that come into like a weekend song, I love that pattern and that vibe. And then maybe it's just like, but I love the way that Frank Ocean does X, Y, Z. And you can kind of like pick and choose like little elements of that. But who are those people for you? Who are those artists?
Man, like, truthfully, it's things like, and maybe it's not so obvious on stuff that I've released, but stuff that I'm working on currently. It's like a lot of the Weeknd stuff. Like, I think I didn't rate The Weeknd that much until Dawn FM came out. And I was like, this is a flipping cool album.
It's kind of become the new Michael Jackson.
Totally the new Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
And I think Dawn FM is like the most kind of like, it was always sort of subtle, but now Dawn FM is like, I'm Michael
Loud
Jackson
and
in
proud
2020,
about it, yeah.
2022. Yeah. But like other influences, like there's a lot more guitar on some tracks that we're working with, and I'm really into the Police for their,
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And I put the Police for so many things, man. I think Stuart Copeland, their drummer, like, so many cool patterns from them, that the groove, but also their guitar tones. But I'm super into like a lot of soul stuff, like Thundercat or Silk Sonic. I think Silk Sonic is so good, man.
There's just something about
I
I can't help but.
Yeah, and I think I honestly think that they're trying to remind everyone, like, this is what music was, and it's not like flashy production. It's just amazing songwriting. And now Lizzo's kind of followed suit as well. Like, her new singles, like, production-wise, like, really stripped back. So that's actually what I'm going to try and do, is like release some stripped back stuff. I don't really want to auto-tune anything either.
Get the growls.
Been
listening to a lot of Fleetwood Mac.
Dude,
it's just like, and I've just been playing it a lot. Like the top 20 songs in my like Spotify, I think like 8 of them are now just Fleetwood Mac, just dotted out. And it's the way that you can hear the hand stop cymbal.
Yeah.
You can just hear the growl or the breath in before. It's like all of the human mistake edited out things are left in, and it's so nice.
That's why it's good, man. It's funny you say that. I was listening to Fleetwood Mac last night, and I forget, it was I think it's a song called Chains.
Oh, this is my favorite one at the moment. This is the way that they take it down, and then they do the bass,
but then like,
and it just builds
but
up.
But the outro is like a totally different part, right? So I was sitting there listening, and I was like, because I've heard that song 1,000 times.
Yeah.
But I'd never listened to that song.
You've heard it, but you haven't listened to
it. Exactly.
Yeah.
And Maddie and I in the kitchen, I said to Maddie, I was like, I've never listened to this song before. This is amazing. Like, and that was so cool. But yeah, and like just not trying to make everything perfect is what I'm really into that idea right now. And I was listening to Justin Hawkins, lead singer of The Darkness.
No, I haven't heard.
Okay, well he's
opening me up to something new here.
Okay, well so this guy is, The Darkness, right?
No.
I believe and I think God love.
No, I'm under a rock with this one.
Really?
Yeah, I am.
Wow.
Deeply under a rock with this one. Clearly,
Wow.
I need to rectify this.
So basically, he started his own podcast, and he just talks about music stuff, and he talks about auto-tune and production, and he just kind of sold me on the idea that all the mistakes that you make, whether your pitch is slightly off or your timing's a little bit weird, that's you. That's like a computer can make you perfect, but like you lose a lot of soul in that.
One of the things that I've been doing, I've recently really just committed to, whenever I have a birthday, I just tell people what vinyl records I want.
That's a good idea, man.
And I want to be like 60 with a room with a vinyl player and just like a ton of records that I got throughout my birthdays. And I'm like writing like who gave me what over the years just on the inside of them. And I recently found the J Dilla Donuts.
Right.
And he had it was MPK, MPX, and everything is hand done. So I believe his process was that he had vinyl records. He would play them in, and then he would chop them up manually and sample them for everything. And it's so weird and disjointed, but you can feel exactly how and when he's put his hand on the pad to get that thing playing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like the timing, you couldn't quantize it for a lot of things. And it's so off, but it's so nice to listen to.
That's sick.
The human mistake, error laden.
Totally.
Thing that it is.
I was listening, like Bjork, who's an artist who I think is flipping unreal, and she was saying, like, this is from the 90s, and she was saying that people say, everyone's giving computer music, which is what they were calling it, computer music has no soul, and she was like, it's on the artist to put the soul into it. But I think we've gone so far the other way by trying to make things as perfect as possible with the auto-tuning and the timing, that perfection, now it's so perfect that it's also soulless. Like it's kind of, I'm in a weird mind about it.
It's funny when you hear certain songs and like you have all of these like hits that come out, and then I just remember when Adele released her Go Easy On Me song. It's her and a piano, I think.
Yeah, right.
Somebody plays like a bass drum. Like that's the 3 layers of the song.
Yeah.
But because it's just her and like the song blew up. Yes, it's Adele and she's a big artist, but because it was her and her voice, and it's so you can hear the breaths, you can hear bits of saliva in there a little bit. It's just like it's weird that like the fact that it's just that is what makes it unique now. Yeah. Versus like, oh, this is super polished. How unique is all the work that went into this? It's like, no, this is just stripped back, just human emotion. And you can hear the emotion in it because she's allowed to have those errors and the quivering of the voice and all those sorts of things. So,
I think I was again saying this just last night. It's weird this is all coming up. We were listening to, I think it was like a Stevie Wonder record, or maybe it was Prince or something. We had a bunch of stuff on of that kind of era. And I really feel like there was a point in history when when music production was still basically just moving levels and maybe some EQing. When that was the production, the quality of the music was insane. Like the actual artistry of the music. You have to play it and you have to be really, really good. Now, I feel like a lot of it is about the quality of the production and not the actual music. And I feel like there's a point when maybe it was like the 70s, or like I feel like it's around the 70s when musicians were so good, and that still exists now. But like you could hear like a pop song on the radio, like a Stevie Wonder pop song or whatever, and that guy's an incredible musician. And now it's kind of like it's about the production. So maybe the songs are more simple, the parts are more kind of basic, but listen to that cool little bit, It's so I think now we're kind of shifting back to going like, let's just make good music. Let's not worry about perfect.
I feel like a lot of it, like you just said, it goes from you have a nice gentle intro, and then you're trying to get to, I guess it's like the gimmick or like the drop, which again, having a drop or having little like dynamic elements is great, but when so much of it enters this formulaic element, and if again it has its place amongst music, it's great to just have on in the car, or if you're cleaning and you just got to have that the bop to whatever you're doing, but where's the art in it? Like sometimes when you watch like D&B or DJ sets and stuff like that, the artistry is in building everybody up and then dropping it in, and like having it for that location is great, but then I think the trap that a lot of artists get caught in is how do I get to my gimmick?
Mm.
And I'm saying this because I've fallen into the thing. It's like,
Oh, same.
like you come up with a chorus or something like that, and you like write like a really cool, like melody for it on the piano or whatever synth you're using. And you're like, this would be a great part for that chorus, but now I'm competing my vocals and the rhythm line or whatever it is. And so it just clashes because you're not getting there for the sake of the songwriting story. You're getting there because of the gimmick in the songwriting. I find that's a really interesting thing that I've caught myself with whenever I've been bedroom producing as well.
Maybe that's something to do as well with like being able to, because with a computer you can now visualize your song.
Yeah.
So you can see this is where I'm trying to get to. So let's just add all the filler I can in to get up to that point.
I'm the worst because I'll go ahead before I start anything and I'll go like, right, I'm going to do 8 bars of this or like a 4-beat lead in, whatever it's going to be. And you map out the song, but then you can't let it go. Or anything. You kind of like, maybe that needs to be a double chorus because it should be, but I've already like put everything out, we'll just leave it. And it's just, you can throw away a great opportunity to really expand on something because I've already put all this in. I don't want to click and drag it over here. Man,
I've basically so guilty of this. Like I was been writing songs and I was like, okay, how long is it? Oh, it's 3 minutes 20. Better cut it down. I'm like, yeah, but what did you say everything you wanted to say? If you did, then sure, cut it down. But don't fit a formula just because you think you have to.
Yeah.
Like there's a bunch of rules that we're all playing, and particularly in pop music. And I get why. It's because that's how we consume music.
It's
but
like the radio edit, but like how important is the radio edit?
Exactly. Yeah. So it just I think I'm just really keen to go back to like just make music and make it sound how you want. Don't be perfect or whatever. Yeah. 2 minds about TikTok because it did really blow up, but not for the things that I wanted necessarily. Okay. It really, really blew up. Now I just said some things off the cuff, not really thinking about it, and then woke up to 10,000 extra followers, and the day after woke up to another 10,000. Okay. It's just blowing up.
How many are you sitting at now?
30 something thousand.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not small by any means.
No, but like I don't know, man. Like I don't really use it that much anymore. Okay. I try not to look at it, because you get stuck for an hour and you're like, oh, where did my day go? And why do I feel anxious? But yeah, it kind of, it definitely helped a little bit. Like it helped, but truthfully, it maybe helped bring 12 people into my really close fan base.
So there's that thing about you just need 1,000 true fans?
Yeah,
you heard
totally.
that one before?
Yeah, man. Now I'm reading stuff about 100 true fans.
Yeah.
With like NFTs and all that stuff. But yeah, so it looks 30 something thousand, whatever it is. I'm sure people open it and go, that looks credible, awesome. And maybe that helps to a degree. I'm not sure because I don't know who those people are. But more than anything, it's helped a few handfuls of people come in and people who are now there for everything. People who are now kind of, they're on for every release. They're into everything I do. That's really, really cool. But the other 29,000, I don't know who they are. So yeah.
So you just mentioned NFTs quickly. You work a lot with blockchain technology and music in Web3. What are your thoughts on this? Because I am incredibly naive to the whole world of NFTs. Probably a bit dismissive, not going to lie.
Sure.
On some things. I think the proof of concept era is here and it's going to mature into something else. And I'm excited for it. And I think it's a really great technology. But as far as music and Web3 go, which is probably where your expertise is, where are we heading?
I honestly think that we are about to, if enough musicians get on board with it, which I think they will.
Because I saw LimeWire
exactly.
It just jumped on and they've just partnered with Universal Music Group. I saw like it's a huge thing. I mean, like Universal Music Group would have been working out how to get rid of LimeWire 15-20 years ago, and now they're doing a big partnership because it's become an NFT platform. Yeah,
I mean it's a slightly long explanation for why I think it's happening, but basically when things like Napster and Spotify come out, no longer are people collecting music. We are paying for the right to listen to someone's music, but we don't own any of that. And one of the cool things about music, you would still remember this, is buying CDs. And like
that's why I do the vinyl shopping.
Exactly.
Now. Well, it like that Jay Dilla thing. I've been looking. I have like 5 or so records in my head, and every time I go by a JB Hi-Fi or a little record store, I just go hunting, and it's the thrill of finally seeing it. You go, yes, it's $50 to $60 when you buy one, but you found it physically in the store, and
it's yours,
and it's yours 100%.
So that's kind of basically for all the convenience of things like Spotify and music streaming, we have lost music collection for almost 20 years. I don't know when. Well, I don't know when
Napster
Napster came out.
2001, the iPod, something like that, right?
So music collection stopped. There's still, the guys who just collect vinyl and have always done that, but we've lost music collection. And I think with artists, basically, the idea that music streaming for a lot of us musicians was like, finally the playing field's equal. You and I can both be on a playlist next to Jay-Z or with Jay-Z. That's not how it worked. Like it's still big labels pouring money into the pockets of those people, so their artists get seen first. What NFTs do basically is two things. One, your music now becomes scarce and collectible. Your next single, you could release 50 copies as an NFT, and that's it. And only the people who hold them can listen to it. That's cool. That it wasn't happening before. It's still in its infancy, but we're going to see what it's going to take is a big artist. It's going to take someone like
imagine like a Frank Ocean.
Like a Frank Ocean or a Billie Eilish or someone huge and super ballsy and just saying...
Didn't Wu-Tang Clan do something similar with one of their records?
A
they
long
sold
time
it for
ago.
like $1 billion.
Yeah.
That Martin Shkreli guy who did the stuff with, I think it was like some drug. He like owned the rights to it and just stopped selling it.
Hectic.
He was like multi-millionaire, evil guy, but he bought that Wu-Tang thing. He's like, no, I'm keeping it myself.
I
Do you
remember
that.
Yeah. So that's what it is, man. It's making music collectible again. And I think that's really, really cool. And I think, music streaming, for all its convenience, the artists are the ones that lose. Sure, there's a dozen of them who are superstars and they're doing just fine. But the majority of artists on Spotify aren't making nearly enough money. Yeah. If you could sell your music directly to people, you're not paying Spotify or any distributor for the right to make no money. You sell directly to your fans. It's still in its infancy, but I think that's where it's heading. And also, the cool thing about it is, say you buy my single, that's an NFT. So you might hold that for a bit, and maybe in that NFT, it also... It's a thing called... Sorry, I'm going to go all over the place.
Go all over it. Make a mess. Make a damn mess.
Gets me excited. So the thing about they're talking about is they're calling utility. So it's basically built-in extras to the NFT. So I could say, look, I'm releasing 10 copies of a single, and every one of them also doubles as your ticket to any show for life. So as long as you hold that NFT, you've also got my single that you can listen to, and it acts as your ticket. So you could rock up on the night to a show I'm playing and be like, I've got the NFT. Like, cool, come on in. That's your ticket, because you're a super fan who is...
It's a blockchain subscription.
Yeah, I mean, if
to
you
distill it down massively.
Sorry, yeah, totally. Yeah. And Kings Leon did this. They released an album as an NFT, and if you bought the deluxe gold version or whatever, you get a front row ticket to a show when they're playing in your city. That's cool. You don't get that with Spotify, and no one's taking the money but them. Which I think once enough artists go, oh, okay, it's cool. It's really exciting.
I love that. There's an interesting element to that as well of I'm not sure what your career was like, but when I was starting, I was lucky enough to be approached 3 times at gigs. And there's the snake oil salesman element of the music industry there. And for 2 of the 3, I didn't go with it. Actually, it was one other opportunity which I just wasn't ready for. And they told me what I needed to do to be ready, and I just never did anything with it, which is just what it was. But the one that I went with, I still owned 100% of the music, but there was so many holes in the bucket. So, here's 100% of the revenue, and then you've got this part of the mechanical royalties percentage disappears here. You've got this part of the streaming, this part of the physical, this part of the radio. It's a massive hole in the bucket for what comes back to you at the end of the day. Yeah. And so the thing that's great about Web3 is that, whilst you can have your music out in the world and own 100% of it and not have to break off parts of the pie just so that you can put it in front of people is massive. And I think one of the things that I wish I knew when I was getting started with music was knowing how to put ISRC codes in songs. Yeah. I wasn't told this until I was ready to release it. What's the ISRC? I don't know. They're like, you signed up with the performing royalties. I was like, oh, no. And they're like, oh, that's all right. We can do it later. In my head, I was like, nope. Let's pause on this. And thank God I did, because knowing to 100% be the owner of your music. You're better to sell 20,000 copies and own 100% than sell 20 million copies and own, 10% of it.
Well, that's it, man. And like, honestly, like I was lucky starting out. I was lucky to make $200 from Spotify streams. Like that's, that was a lot of money. As soon as I minted or / created some NFTs, I sold $150 worth in the first day. Because people were like, you or I might not buy NFTs, but there's people out there that love music and they love collecting it. And I said to this guy who bought one, I got in touch with him and I was like, man, thanks so much. It's like, it's $20 for this NFT. And he was like, no worries, man. I heard the first 10 seconds. I loved it. Had to buy it. I'm like, there's people out there. Yeah. And that, I made what took me like years to make from Spotify in the beginning. I made it in an afternoon. I'm like, once enough musicians know this, I think like streaming is doomed.
Hey, and thanks for watching this episode of Create Creative Creatives. If you want to follow Swaré, our guest, on any of his social platforms, or you want to listen to some of his music, there are links below in the description for you to do just that. And until next time, I'm Hayden Buchanan. This has been Create Creative Creatives, and I will see you next Tuesday.